Blue cards are all about control, consistency and playing the long game. Whether it's disrupting your opponent's strategy, manipulating your own deck or dominating the board, blue has some of the most versatile and impactful tools in the game. In this video we are counting down the top 10 best blue cards in the game and why they are absolute must-haves. Let's dive in! And for our first entry we've got OP05 Kaido for the 10th spot of our list. This card is a 10 cost 12k power character with the Animal, Kingdom and the 4 Emperors typing. Its effect reads the following: on play, draw 4 cards if your opponent has 3 or less life. Now this card's effect is sheer value. Being able to draw 4 cards is busted AF and its requirement is as easy to reach. Because in card games such as in One Piece, hand value is always the biggest factor between winning or losing a match. And Kaido being able to draw you 4 cards not only replaces itself but also adds 3 additional cards into your hand. Think about it this way: how often did you lose a game only because you were just a 1 or 2k counter short? Kaido will get you to at least some counter if you didn't actually build your deck like garbage. This will help you stay alive just a little bit longer, find key pieces to your game plan or answers to your opponent's board off of Kaido's draw. And all of that while being a 12k buddy is pretty nuts. And I cannot fathom why this card doesn't see more play. Well, actually I can, because a 10 Don play is a pretty hefty cost and actually all you will be able to do for this turn. This makes it a really slow card which gives your opponent time to set up an answer, but nonetheless it generates pure value baked into a body which is still hard to remove. For most of the times Lucci players can only remove a 7 and even 9 cost, but a 10 cost requires at least some more resources and setup. But you should still expect to see this card getting removed because the meta is kinda built in that way to instantly KO anything possible. So much so that you actually would need some more stuff around Kaido to be able to still control the game. If Kaido is the only thing on your board and your opponent has some decent attackers and follows up his turn with somehow removing your recently established Kaido, you're back to square and actually gave your opponent more time and attacks to squeeze you out. The cards you drew with this effect would seem irrelevant in hindsight because they would be wasted as counters just shortly after, which makes Kaido more of a double-edged sword. So what does all of this do for this card's placement in the list? All in all, the effect is really strong, but nothing that changes the game's dynamic. It's rather a win more card, what gives it enough credit as the first entry for our list. For the number 9 spot of our list, we've got OP09 Dracul Mihawk. This card is a 6 cost 7k power / attribute type character, which has the blocker ability, an on-play effect and the cross-guild typing. Its on-play reads the following: on play, draw 2 cards and discard 1 card from your hand. Dracul Mihawk is one of the cleanest examples of a card that balances flexibility and power into a single package. At 6 cost and 7000 power, this card is already a blocker tank. But what really makes this Mihawk shine is that on-play effect. Draw 2 cards, then trash 1 card from your hand. This on-play effect is huge for decks that rely on having the right pieces at the right time. Not only do you get a raw card advantage, but you also gain a chance to filter out weaker or less useful cards from your hand. All of that while maximizing the chance to get your game-winning cards. Here's an example. Just being able to blocker up while finding 2Ks can make you turn an otherwise lost game into a win. That kind of filtering is huge for decks that thrive on specific setups or combos, especially in controlled strategies where having the right answers is everything in a game. The 7000 power stat line is another key strength. Most blockers cap out at 5 or 6000 power, so Mihawk's ability to wall off even high cost attackers without needing any help is a big deal. And if your opponent can't clear him, he becomes a solid offensive option in later turns. Pushing damage when the board is under control, and protecting your life when your life is at risk. You see, removing this card is hard anyways, because its stat line and cost, it barely dodges stuff like Ben Beckman, a Doc Q into a Laboon, and many more, which make it especially sticky. When it comes to drawbacks though, the biggest downside here is that he's got no counter at all. That makes Mihawk a dead draw in some situations, especially when you need counter in hand. And at 6 cost, he's not something you can throw out casually. In more aggressive matchups, you can be punished for that. But in the end, Mihawk is all about flexibility. He offers draw power, consistency and board presence all into one card. That's the reason why he earns his place at the 9th spot of our list. At the number 8 spot, we've got OP01 Doflamingo. This card is a 3 cost 4000 power character with a 1k counter. He's got the special trait, the Don Quixote Pirates typing, as well as the 7 Warlords. But more importantly, he's got the blocker trait as well as an on-play ability that reads the following. On play, look at 5 cards from the top of your deck and return them to the top or bottom of your deck in any order. At first, this card looks like nothing special. But Doflamingo has a plethora of qualities which qualify it for this list. Being able to dig 5 deep and set up for the upcoming turns is nothing unusual as an effect, and neither is being a blocker. But doing both of these things as a measly 3 cost is just pure value. Additionally, it lets you put those cards at the top or bottom of your deck, in case they might not be useful. This also increases the chance of actually seeing what you need afterward, which adds extra consistency, which is well welcome for any deck. Being a blocker makes it just as flexible as it can be, because with a 4k stat line, it can become an attacker the following turn if you didn't need that blocker trait, which makes this card highly flexible in any situation. You see, getting the most of your turn involves playing the best thing possible on your curve. Let's suppose you go first. Being said, there are not many things you can do when you hit your 3 Don turn, mostly due to the fact that there is a lack of good options. But playing Doflamingo also gives you a chance of finding your 5 Don play, your 7 Don play and your 9 Don play. And all of that while being a part of a strong engine, the 7 Warlords. He also has a counter and is never a dead play. You can combo it out with something else, improve your consistency, or just put out a blocker. This card's flexibility is the biggest reason for its placement on this list. And there certainly would have been more options to put here. This card was just something I considered to be generally good for any deck, not just the specific archetype it was supposed to be used in. So this card was just a universally good pick for me for the 8th spot. Coming in at the number 7 spot, we've got OP06 Sanji. Now this card is a 9 cost 9000 power attacker with a strike attribute and the straw hat typing. And its effect reads the following. On play, reveal 1 card from the top of your deck and play up to 1 character with a cost of 9 or less other than Sanji. Then place the rest at the bottom of your deck. Now this effect seems pretty busted. Being able to cheat out a 9 cost is a standalone unique thing exclusive to this card. But the first thing you realize about this is the huge downside to this card's effect. Because it is really setup dependent. Not only do you need to have the top card of your deck stacked and ready to being cheated out, you would also, just to maximize the value of Sanji's effect, need to run as many 9 costs as logically possible in a 50 card stack, just to be able to always see a 9 cost, which would clog up your deck with too many bricks anyways. You see, hitting a 3 cost with this is terrible. A 5 cost would be okay-ish, but you always want to hit a 9 cost with this. The thing is, not many decks are built in a way to get the best out of this Sanji's effect. There's many cards to stack your deck like OP01 Perona as well as ST17 Buggy, but you would need a consistent stacking option. On top of that, you also would need the right card to fit the game state at all times that you eventually cheat out with the Sanji. Because the problem is, in blue there are only 2 considerable targets to stack on top of your deck. One of them would be OP01 Mihawk and the other would be OP09 Odin. and neither of those cards justify going out of your way that much to make this combo in particular work. And only in a multicolored deck like OP08 Marco or even OP05 Queen, it will be possible to make this happen. Targets like OP04 Yamato or OP01 Whitebeard can justify it just enough. And even if all the stars align, Sanji is not really searchable in those strategies, which are rogue at best anyways. But nonetheless, this card's effect will definitely be viable in the future. Despite its clunkiness and lack of support, due to the potential of this card, it is a well-deserving pick for the number 7 spot. For the next spot of our list, we've got OP08 Jozu. This card is a 6-cost character with a power of 7000 and a strike attribute. It has a 1k counter and the Whitebeard Pirates typing. It has an on-play effect that reads the following. On play, you may return one of your characters other than this character to the owner's hand. Return up to one character with a cost of 6 or less to the owner's hand. Now, returning one of your own characters to your hand might seem like a downside at first, but it's actually a way to reuse powerful on-play effects from cards like Sengoku that you played out earlier in the game to give you a chance to double dip on their utility and search with them multiple times, or even gain it as counter in hand when needed. The ability to return up to a 6-cost character to your opponent's hand is a huge tempo play. This can completely disrupt their setup by forcing them to replay a key piece, which slows down their game plan and costs them resources. I mean, just by looking at the OP09 meta, it becomes clear that there are many targets for this card's effect. Cards like Yasop, Kid or Sangoro are all key pieces to their respective strategies, and suddenly they have to go back to the opponent's hand, giving you space, time and more breathing room. The fact that Jozu can net you one card in hand while also disrupting your opponent's board, while also being a 7k buddy, is what truly makes this card strong. The only real downside is its cost. Most of the times you won't be able to do anything else the turn you drop this card because it will come on curve. So it can be punished if you are in a more tempo sensitive matchup. For example, against Zoro, who has a wide board most of the times anyways. But overall, Diamond Jozu is one of the most versatile tools in the game right now. He's strong, disruptive and pluses you a card. There will be more situations in which he is valuable than not. If not so, he still has a 1k counter. That being said, he's a great fit for our 6th spot of this list. For the halftime of our list, we've got OP05 Ulti. Now this card is a 4-cost 5k attacker with a strike attribute. It has a 1k counter, an on-play effect and the Animal Kingdom typing. Its effect reads the following. On play, if your leader is multicolored, look at 3 cards from the top of your deck, add up to 1 card to your hand. Then place the rest at the top or bottom of the deck in any order. You might be wondering where the hell this card came from and why you haven't seen it by now, and I haven't either up until the research of this video. But as soon as you realize that it can add any card, no matter the typing, the color or its attributes, you will realize that this card potentially has the best search effect in the entire game. The ability to add anything makes this card extremely flexible. You can gain so much momentum just by adding the right card to your hand and returning the rest on top of your deck in your desired order. Just good enough to set up your next turn and secure hitting your curve perfectly. But other than that, just only the ability to add anything makes it possible to search out cards that otherwise would be impossible to search. And that makes this card special. Do you remember the 7th spot of our list? It was OP06 Sanji. And do you also remember how broken its effect could be if you had the right setup to make it work? And do you also remember that Sanji is unsearchable? Yeah, right. If you would do it right and with a little bit of luck or setup beforehand, you could make Ulti search out Sanji and set up your next play for the next turn so your Sanji could hit your curve perfectly. I know that this is highly theoretical and in practice it isn't as easy as I may have presented it, but only the ability to make this happen shows you that this card can do something that no other card in the game can. If you run this, you'll be suddenly able to grab things that are not specific to your archetype or strategy, which will be staples most of the time anyways. And if there's nothing on your pile that you need, you can still bottom deck it. But regardless of its unrestricted power, it still has some downsides. For one, it is a bit awkward to play this card on your 5 or 4 cost turn, because you can most of the times establish a more meaningful body, which likely is more fitting to your deck's strategy. And that somewhat brings us to the second point. At this time there's not really a deck that needs this card right now, or more specifically can benefit from it consistently. Why is it still so high on the list, you ask? Well, fact is that there is no searcher in the game that has such a splashable effect. And I genuinely believe as the game evolves and delivers more multicolored leaders in blue, this card will show its true strengths one day with the right strategy. Ulti is a fantastic card for any blue multicolored deck, offering both solid stats and a unique on-play ability that improves consistency, and was my choice for today's hot take of the video. And for the next card of our list, we've got ST17 Boa Hacock. Now this card is a 4 cost 6k power attacker with a blocker stat line and an on-play effect that reads the following. On play, look at up to 3 cards from the top of your deck and place them at the top or bottom of your deck in any order. Then give up to 1 rested Don to one of your 7 warlords of the sea leader or characters. This card is a powerhouse. It packs versatility, board presence and utility all in one. She has a vanilla stat line which makes her outclass most blockers in the game. And on top of that, she has a disgusting effect. Her on play lets you look at the top 3 cards of your deck and rearrange them in any order. And if you don't need them, you can just put them at the bottom of your deck. This is the deck manipulation we see from cards like Buggy or Perona, and it comes free with this card. And that's one of the reasons why I put this over any other 7 Warlords of the Sea character. Because this card does just too much. With her Buggy-esque effect, she lets you set up combos and future turns, which helps you avoid dead draws and makes sure to draw into what you need or set up combos, and setting up your leader ability. She just helps you to play your turns with the uppermost precision that is possible. And that's the bottom line of the reason why this card is so good. This card is meant to be support for the OP01 Doflamingo build. And it becomes pretty obvious if you look at the Doflamingo leader ability, because this leader can cheat out a 7 Warlords type character from the top of your deck for the cost of 3 Don. In this, the Boa becomes an instant staple due to the fact that it can enable you to use your leader ability when you shouldn't be able to. Because having the possibility to play Boa on your 6 Don turn and still use your leader ability to cheat out a character for free, this is just nuts. And this is only due to the reason that Boa can refund part of her cost while attaching a rested Don to one of your Warlord's leader or characters. And this is not something you can only do in one turn, you can do it as long as you have Boas. So this game-breaking ability also makes it possible to play 2 characters on your 10 Don turn, while still being able to use your leader ability and cheat out another one from your deck. Making you being able to play for 11 Don whenever you got a Boa out is just game breaking. This card is pure value and is one of the biggest reasons why this deck can perform. There is a reason why that blue Doflamingo deck is the best in the format, and Boa only solidates the placement in the meta by making it utmost consistent. Looking at the downsides, I have to break to you that there is no real downsides to this card, except maybe not having a counter, but it's trivial nonetheless because you will have enough counter cards in the 7 Warlord strategy anyways. It doesn't need a counter, it's a blocker with a vanilla stat line, it is searchable, and it can also be cheated out with Jinbei as well as with your leader ability within this archetype. This is the best representation of what a support card for a specific strategy can look like, and is easily one of the best cards in the game. There's no other card that can offer this much mileage on a 4-cost body, which makes it adequate to fit the 4th spot. Moving on to our 3rd spot for this list, we've got OP03 Gum Gum Red Rock. This card is a 6-cost event within the Straw Hat crew and has a main effect to activate that reads the following. Main plays up to 1 character at the bottom of the owner's deck. It also has a trigger which reads the following. Trigger plays up to 1 character with a cost of 4 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck. This card is easily one of the best control tools in the game. A 6-cost event might seem expensive at first, but Gum Gum Red Rock pays off every time you use it because of how indefinitely it removes a threat. And here's the thing, this card doesn't just remove the card by bouncing it to the hand or KOing it. It sends it straight to the Shadow Realm, same day delivery and all. Jokes aside, this card sends its target straight to the bottom of the deck, which is a big deal. Or rather a massive deal, because unlike other removal effects, there's no lingering presences, no second chances. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's an 8-cost Katakuri, a 10-cost Kaido, or something with a KO protection. It just gets rid of what you need to get rid of. Red Rock just clears it and makes sure you don't ever have to deal with it again. Unless your opponent somehow manages to cycle their whole deck, which is super unlikely in most matches. It also has a very good trigger effect, because when it flips off life you get to bottom deck any 4-cost. Which is basically the main ability of this card, just reduced to 4-cost. And considering how much of the meta revolves around characters in this 4-cost range, we can definitely see the viability of this trigger effect. Think about cards like Jesus Burgess, Lucky Roo, or even setup pieces like Laboon. This trigger can swing tempo right back at your favor for just 0 Don investment. But still, the real power of this card remains in the board control range that it has, especially when your opponent is building high-cost characters in the 8 to 10 Don range. For most of the times, Red Rock just bypasses all the protection there is in the game and removes your opponent's expensive Don commitment by sending those cards somewhere they can't come back from and leave you with 4 extra Don to work with. This is just mathematically value for you if your opponent dropped a 10-cost character and that is all that he has done for the turn prior. This card is just clean, efficient, and it is a removal that doesn't leave anything behind. Of course, there's a downside. 6-cost isn't cheap, and dropping this means you are giving up a chunk of tempo for the turn, which can leave you exposed, especially in tighter matchups. But in control heavy matchups or against decks that tend to build bigger boards, this card is one of the best answers you can have against those strategies. Gum Gum Red Rock is an overall flexible and game-changing card. It's almost impossible to play around because there are only 2 cards in the entire game that are unaffected by it at any time. And the mere fact that there is only 1 other card in the game that can replicate this effect, being Raigo, should speak volume about the power level of it. Gum Gum Red Rock is as good as it gets when it comes to single target removal and the second best blue event in the game, which makes it a solid number 3 pick for our list. And for the second place of our list, coming up as the runner-up, we've got OP06 Charlotte Pudding. Now this card is a 4-cost 4000 attacker with a 1k counter and an on-play effect that reads the following. On play, your opponent returns all cards in their hand to their deck and shuffles it. Then your opponent draws 5 new cards. Now this Big Mom Pirates Biatch is hands down the best reset in the game. And why is that? It's the only one. Its ability to destabilize your opponent's game plan is unmatched in any color. In case your opponent was holding onto a combo like Luffy-Taro in Sangoro with Pluffy or Laboon into Doku with Blackbeard, that combo is gone for good. And that's the point. Literally every deck is depending on some kind of sequencing with card effects to make their engine running. And disrupting that can be crucial to your opponent's curve, endgame, and anything he was holding onto or did mulligan for to have as an option to niche situations in any state of the game. Also, it just completely messes up your opponent's counter options if the game state is in a board contest phase, so that it makes it easier to clear your opponent's characters for good. And we didn't even mention the potentially awful loss of advantage just in hand size. There's one thing I have to mention. No matter the card game, whether it is Yu-Gi-Oh!, One Piece, Magic or anything else, every card game is decided by hand advantage. And this card has the potential to rip an infinite amount of cards from your opponent's hand, all while netting you a body on board. Take it this way, 4-cost Law is annoying because it can rip 2. 8-cost Isho is annoying for the same reason, but they are both restricted and have some cost tied to them. Law minuses a Don, Isho doesn't do enough to be costing you almost all your entire turn to be played out, but pudding costs exactly nothing in comparison to what damage she can do, and all of that while only being a 4-cost, having a 1k counter and being a 4k body on top of that. This card is truly broken and it is hard to understand why it was printed in the first place. Being a generic card only adds to all of that. In terms of raw power for its effect, there is no match for this card in the entire game. The effect itself is game winning, which any one of you surely can confirm from personal experience at this point, because a well-timed pudding steals game like nothing else. With all that glazing, you are surely wondering why it is at the second place. That's because there is a downside to this card, which is actually really simple. Just play around it. Always assume your opponent has it in his hand and could drop it at any time. Keep your hands around 6 or 7 cards and you're good. And that is all to this card. There is not really much I could add to this. The card is really broken, it can be played around, and that's the reason why it has the second spot at this list, because unlike our second place, our number 1 pick does not offer a way to play around it as easily. Now we made it to the honorable mentions of this list. Before we get into the honorable mentions, I would like to point out some things for this list. You might or might not be agreeing with the placements up until this point at the list, and I feel the urge to explain some things beforehand. I decided that one archetype or one specific deck only can contribute 1 card to the list, and that's why I, for example, chose Boa Hacock for the list. Now there's reasonable doubt to whether it should be Jinbei or Boa Hacock, but I felt that Boa Hacock does so much more than Jinbei that I justified it to put her in this list rather than Jinbei. Other than that, there are many cards that do something special for a unique archetype, but nothing special in general. I tend to focus more on what a card generally does for the game or for a specific color, rather than it being special for a specific combo or an archetype. So this list is based off the general power of a card. As you have seen, there's a kind of spicy pick for the list. You can disagree with this, but this is a flexible spot. And there will be hot takes for every upcoming list. There also will be honorable mentions, which we will get to for this list in a second. Before we get to the first spot of the list, let's look at today's honorable mentions. First, we've got OP04 Kaido. Great effect, but unfortunately the same downsides as the OP05 Kaido. It is a bit too slow and can leave you exposed, even though its effect is straight value. OP03 Sanji's Pilaf. One of the best staples in the game. It is a straight up value gain and good for early turns in which you'll have nothing to do otherwise. It will help any deck, but kinda got power crept, which is the reason why it's used only in few specific decks. OP03 Kaya. One of the best 2Ks in blue. Its on-play effect is also very valuable. It filters out your hand and it's also a staple in many decks. Also, most decks can add it back to hand for extra value. All in all, these cards barely missed the list, but there's enough arguments for them to fit in as well. So don't get triggered, rather feel free to write your takes in the comment section down below. And for our final pick for this list is Gravity Blade Raging Tiger. This card is a 7-cost event and has a main effect as well as a trigger. The effect reads the following: main plays up to 2 characters with a cost of 6 or less at the bottom at the owner's deck in any order. And the trigger reads plays up to 1 character with a cost of 5 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck. This card as the first placement of our list is just fitting, because this is hands down the best blue card there is. For the cost of 7 Don, you are removing 2 6-cost characters. But not only removing, it is the strongest type of removal. As we mentioned earlier, bottom decking is a counter to so many effects, so many protection and on KO effects, and it bypasses all of that. Whether it is Burgess, Magellan, Kikunojo, Lucky Roo or even Sabo, every single color has some sort of pesky card that is a pain in the ass to get rid of, but only blue has bottom decking as a removal option. Think about that, you can even maximize the efficiency and it equals 12 Dons worth of removal at that point. Sure, most of the times you are probably removing a 5 cost, sometimes maybe a 4 cost or lower, but that is all you need with it. Because the true strength of this card is the tempo swing you get afterwards. Clearing the board is the most crucial element to win a game, and if your opponent can go wide and establish a big board, it will be hard to contest it afterwards. Especially in the OP09 meta, in which most decks rely on a strong endgame like Blackbeard or Shanks, not being able to have consistent removal can be a neck breaker, especially in this meta. Because if you are unable to somehow contest or control the board while transitioning from the early and mid game to the late game, it can be possible that your opponent gets the upper hand in the late game stages, because the blockers that are established earlier decide mostly about who will control the board in the late game. So this card not only helps with that, it kind of is a winning condition against most decks. And on top of that, it also has a busted trigger, and probably one of the best in the game as well. Bottom decking a 5 cost for free must be one of the best feelings there is, except, well, a 0 cost event. And all of that, and the fact that there is no card that does it like Raging Tiger, makes it well worthy of the #1 pick of our list. So then, this is it for this video. This is the first video I have produced for this channel, and because of that, I'd like to hear your feedback. Feel free to write it down in the comments, and feel free to add anything other than my opinion to this list. I have put many thoughts into this list, but I surely want to know what you are disagreeing with, so let me know. And most importantly, as I mentioned, this is the first video on this channel, and I've put very many hours into this, so it will be well appreciated if you share this with your friends or with your non-existing friends, so you can disagree together on my takes. I'd like to get the views. Thank you.